Hello again guys, ResetJet here. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we'll be demonstrating how to perform an RNAV GPS approach in the 757. Now, there are three mnemonics that I'll need to introduce to your vocabulary, one of which we do use on every approach, but together, they'll help you better understand some of the nuances of this type of approach. Well, let's dive in. So we're currently descending on the Grinch 5 into Orlando for the RNAV GPS 36 left approach. And prior to every descent, we want to make sure that we've covered everything we need for the approach. The mnemonic we use to ensure that we've done all that is called the 4 B's. Those are the boxes, bugs, brakes, and a brief. And when it comes to the boxes here, we're generally talking about the FMC. Now, obviously, if you're using an ILS for our approach, we want to ensure that we've got the appropriate ILS frequency tuned into the box here, as well as the inbound course. And same thing for the VOR. If we're actually using a VOR for our approach, we want to ensure that we've got that radio tuned in as well as the inbound or outbound course, depending on which approach you're shooting. But generally speaking, especially for today's approach, we're talking about the FMC. What we want to do is ensure that we've got the appropriate approach selected, and then we just want to verify that each waypoint, glide path, and any altitude or speed constraints matches what is actually on the charted approach. In regards to bugs, we are referring to airspeed and baro or radio altimeter minimum bugs. Now, Flight Factor has a fancy feature where once you've selected which flap setting you want for the approach into the R4 key in the FMC, it'll automatically set our reference speed for us on the airspeed indicator. Now, when it comes to setting our minimum bugs, the only time we really use the decision height selector is for Cat 2 or Cat 3 approaches. Any other approach, we essentially use the baro bug, orange bug on our altimeter setting. Now, if we're shooting an approach that has a decision altitude, then we're going to set that decision altitude on our baro bug. But if the approach has an MDA, then we're going to add 50 feet to whatever that MDA altitude is. For the brakes, we are talking about the auto brakes here. So in the real aircraft, we tend to use auto brakes 3, which is generally enough to get us off of a dry grooved runway within 7,000 feet with idle thrust. Now, I find that in the sim that tends to be more than adequate, so anything under auto brakes 3, so auto brakes 2 or 1 in the sim should work out just fine. But we want to make sure that we got some sort of auto brake setting actually set. And lastly, of course, we want to ensure that we have properly briefed the approach, if anything, so that we have an idea as to what we are going to do in the event we have to go around. And a pro tip, have an idea as to where you might be getting off of the runway at, because your fellow simmer who's on a short mile final will really appreciate it. Now, as we begin the approach, we'll be introduced to our second mnemonic today, dubbed FRAG. Now, we'll use this to verify a few more things. So the F in FRAG stands for football. Now, this is our vertical deviation pointer. We just call it football because, well, it resembles an American football. Now, if you don't have this populated on your EHSI yet, you can get it to by going to the VNAV page and selecting Descend Now, if it doesn't populate, or by entering an artificially high cruise altitude, but that's not the case today. Now, the R in FRAG stands for RNP. Now, while this isn't simulated, if we were shooting an RNP approach, we'd essentially just want to make sure that the correct RNP value would be inputted in the FMC, which the lowest is 0.30 we can do in the 7.5. Now, the A in FRAG stands for active waypoint, so essentially we want to ensure that we are flying towards an active waypoint. And then lastly, we want to make sure that the GPS is updating, which we can do by going to the second position page here and ensuring that we've got this GPS symbol. And finally, the last mnemonic we'll discuss today is LAVS. Now, that stands for LNAV, altitude, VNAV, and speed intervention. You can basically think of this step as the equivalent of selecting the approach button for an ILS approach. Essentially, once we're clear for the approach and we've met any one of these criteria, Case in point, we are being vectored to final now at a waypoint altitude. Then we can use this technique. So we've got a intercepting heading here for the final approach course. We're going to select LNAV. For the altitude window, we'll reference our barrow minimums. Today that's 406. We're going to round up to the next 100 feet, so that's going to be 500 if we were using just the LNAV minimums. Again, with that added 50 feet for the MDA, we would select 600 feet, but 500 feet for our altitude window. We'll then select VNAV, which will close our speed window, and then we'll select speed intervene. And now we are essentially, apart from getting the gear down and setting the airplane up for landing, and we are essentially just going to monitor the autopilot for those cross track and vertical track errors, and wait till see the runway, and then fly the aircraft to the ground. Now, at some point, once we're 300 feet below the missed approach altitude, but no later than 1,000 feet AGL, we can set our missed approach altitude in the altitude window. Well guys, that'll pretty much do it for this tutorial. I hope you guys enjoy this format a little bit better. I didn't think it was necessary to hold your hand from the top of the descent all the way down to the runway. I felt most of you guys are pretty competent about that, and just might want to know what the nuances are of what we try to make sure we cover in the real world when it comes to RNAV GPS approaches. But if that's not the case, leave me a comment, and maybe I will do a tutorial from the top of the descent all the way down to the runway. In closing, it may not be, and I seriously doubt if it is simulated, but it may be worth noting that the 7.5 and 7.6 don't have temperature correcting barometric altimeters, which is to say that they've got uncompensated barrow VNAV systems. And if you take a look at the very first note on this RNAV GPS approach, it actually says that for uncompensated barrow VNAV systems, the LNAV VNAV approaches are not authorized below 3 degrees Celsius or above 54 degrees Celsius. Now, again, it's a sim. It's not something that we may care about as much, but in the real world, it's something we do have to take a note of, and we would have to make sure we made those altitude corrections in our manuals. But again, this is something that I thought may be worth noting here at the end, and even though it may not be simulated. But again, guys, if you like the video, like, subscribe, leave me a comment, and I will see you guys on the next one.